All right, you might have noticed the moon is back in the spotlight. And not just in a nostalgic way.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't your grandparents' space race. We're talking about a completely different landscape from the Apollo era.
Absolutely. It's a whole new ballgame.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
We're diving deep into what people are calling the second lunar age.
Right?
This is a new multipolar era of lunar exploration.
Right.
And the goal isn't just, flags and footprints anymore.
Not at all.
It's about establishing a sustainable, long-term human presence, especially at the lunar South Pole, where the resources are thought to be.
What's fascinating here is just how much the ambition has really grown. You provided us with a fantastic stack of sources covering this incredibly exciting yet, well, complex period.
Yeah, there's a lot to get through.
There is. And our mission today is to break it all down for you. Because while some might be thinking, okay, a test bed on the moon may be ready by 2025.
That seems ambitious.
It does.
Yeah.
And the picture our sources paint is that 2025 to 2030 is actually more of a critical technology demonstration phase.
Okay, so proving things out first.
Exactly. This new era is fundamentally about laying the foundational groundwork. It's about rigorously testing those crucial technologies and, importantly, proving the business models that will enable those full-fledged lunar bases we're talking about for the 2030s.
And that groundwork, it turns out, it's happening in a really interesting geopolitical landscape, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
When we talk about this new drive to the moon, how much of it is actually shaped by strategic competition, mirroring what we see playing out here on Earth? Is this really just a new space race, or is it something more nuanced?
It's definitely more nuanced, and you've hit on a critical point there. This competition has sort of solidified into two primary competing visions, each with its own framework for how humanity should expand into space.
Two main camps, basically.
Pretty much. On one side, you have the Artemis Accords. Now, these are led by the United States. NASA's right at the center. They're built on non-binding bilateral agreements, drawing heavily from the 1967 Outer Space Treaty.
Okay, what are the core ideas?
The core principles are things like peaceful purposes, transparency, making sure systems can work together, interoperability, and, crucially, the sustainable use of space resources.
And who signed up?
It's a broad coalition. As of mid-2024, we're talking over 54 nations. You've got established space powers like Japan, Canada, European Space Agency members,
Right.
and also emerging ones like India, Brazil, the UAE. Its operational model is very much a hub-and-spoke system. It leverages international partners, but also relies heavily on a robust domestic commercial industry.
And the end goal?
The primary goal is clear: a sustainable human presence on the moon, explicitly as a stepping stone to Mars.
Okay, so that's the Artemis vision. What's the alternative?
The alternative is the International Lunar Research Station, or ILRS. This one's co-founded by China through CNSA and Russia via Roscosmos.
A different approach, then.
Very different. It's a state-led initiative. The plan is to build a permanent robotic research base, also at the lunar South Pole, which could later be tended by humans.
So state-led versus the U.S. model, using commercial partners more.
Exactly. Their approach uses bilateral agreements too, but with a smaller, though growing, list of partners over 17 currently. Think Pakistan, UAE, who are actually in both camps, interesting, South Africa, Egypt, Venezuela, Belarus.
Okay.
The ILRS model is much more centralized, with China's CNSA really defining the roadmap. Their philosophy is framed as joint consultation, construction, and shared benefits. The aim is a long-term autonomous research station, eventually with people.
So when we look at these two big frameworks, it feels like it's less about which flag gets planted first this time,
Right.
and maybe more about who gets to write the rule book for the next 100 years of off-world activity. Is that the real prize here?
That's precisely it. You've nailed it. The significance of these two frameworks, it really can't be overstated. It's a fundamental contest over future space governance.
How so?
Well, the Artemis Accords champion a Western kind of market-driven approach, emphasis on transparency, commercial resource extraction, while the ILRS represents a more state-centric, infrastructure-led model. The success or failure of missions under each banner, the actual landings, the resource prospecting, that will directly influence which practices become the de facto standard.
For things like lunar mining, traffic control.
Exactly. Lunar mining, traffic management, resource sharing protocols. It's effectively about writing the rules for the off-world economy before it truly kicks off.
But it's not just a straight two-sided race, is it? You mentioned these pivotal powers. Are these like the swing states of this new lunar age?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. These are key space agencies. They aren't just simply aligned with one bloc. They have their own independent capabilities, which gives them significant influence.
Like who?
Well, take India's ISRO, for instance. They're formally aligned with Artemis, yes, but they are fiercely independent, and they're renowned for cost-effectiveness, frugal innovation.
Chandrayaan-3 landing was huge.
Absolutely historic. Landing near the lunar South Pole really solidified their top-tier status, and they've got big plans. Chandrayaan-4 for sample return around 2027-28, and a major collaboration with Japan, the LUPEX mission, probably 2026-28. That really showcases their diverse partnerships.
Okay, India. Who else?
Then there's Japan's JXA. They're a key Artemis partner, a real technological leader. Their SLIM mission, you might remember, demonstrated that incredible pinpoint lunar landing.
Under 100 meters accuracy, right?
That's right. The ability to land where we want, not just where it is easy. That capability is absolutely critical for future science, for resource extraction. It makes JXA pretty much an indispensable partner. And like we said, they're working with India on LUPEX.
Makes sense. And Europe?
And Europe's ESA. They're a foundational partner in Artemis. They provide critical hardware like the European Service Module, the ESM for the Orion spacecraft, and modules for the Lunar Gateway like IHAB and ESPRI.
So deeply involved in Artemis.
Very deeply. That ensures ESA's central role in human lunar exploration. But crucially, to ensure their own strategic autonomy and access to the moon, ESA is also developing independent capabilities.
Like what?
Like the Argonaut lander. It's a large robotic cargo lander, first flight planned around 2031. It's quite a sophisticated dual strategy, really. Collaborate deeply, but also build your own path.
So alongside these national rivalries and partnerships, there's this other massive force reshaping the lunar age.
Yeah.
The rise of commercial space companies.
Absolutely. It's a defining feature.
How exactly are governments, especially NASA, fostering this commercial revolution on the moon?
Well, NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program, CLPS, is a prime example, isn't it?
It really is.
NASA's basically acting as an anchor customer. They award these fixed-price contracts to American companies, Astrobotic, Intuitive Machines, Firefly, Blue Origin, for delivering payloads to the moon. It seems like a deliberate strategy to kickstart a robust lunar marketplace.
That's exactly the term they use. And in many ways, CLPS functions less like a traditional government procurement office and more like a strategic venture capital fund.
That's a very apt description. They're deliberately accepting higher risk on individual missions. The trade-off is rapid innovation and just getting more shots on goal, a faster cadence of launches.
And we've definitely seen this high-risk, high-reward model play out already, haven't we?
Dramatically. It's almost like a super high-stakes startup incubator, but instead of pitching to VCs in Silicon Valley, you're trying to stick a landing on the moon.
Right.
We saw Astrobotic's Peregrine lander, for instance, suffer that critical propulsion failure shortly after launch.
Yeah, that was tough to watch.
Then Intuitive Machines' IM-1 and IM-2 missions, they did land, which is a huge achievement in itself.
But they tipped over.
Both tipped on their sides, yeah, which limited their operations significantly. However, this iterative approach, this learning by doing, has also led to resounding successes.
Like Firefly.
Exactly. Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost Mission 1, that was a flawless landing, completed its full 14-day surface mission. It really demonstrates this fail fast, learn faster cycle. It enables rapid iteration across multiple companies, proving that the commercial sector can, with experience, achieve what was once only possible for superpowers.
Okay, so that's the big picture. The players, the frameworks, the commercial surge. Now, let's transition maybe to a deeper look at what's actually happening on the ground or, well, on the moon. Starting with the US-led Artemis campaign.
Sounds good.
Artemis is, it's arguably the world's most ambitious lunar initiative right now, aiming for that sustainable human presence, using the moon as a proving ground for Mars.
That's the vision.
And it's a complex architecture. You've got the Space Launch System, the SLS rocket,
NASA's big rocket, yeah.
the Orion spacecraft, with ESA providing that critical service module we mentioned,
The ESM.
the Lunar Gateway, that small space station, kind of staging post in lunar orbit.
An international collaboration hub, too.
Right. And then the Human Landing System, the HLS. And that's being bought from commercial companies like SpaceX with Starship for Artemis III.
And Blue Origin with Blue Moon later on.
Exactly.
And the status of these missions really highlights the complexities involved. Artemis I completed back in 2022. That was a successful uncrewed test flight of SLS and Orion.
Well, Mostly.
And mostly, yes. But the post-flight analysis found that significant, unexpected heat shield issue.
Oh, right. I remember that.
Yeah, and that actually became a primary pacing item for the following missions. It really underscored the immense technical challenges, even just getting back to lunar orbit safely.
So that impacted Artemis II.
It did. Artemis II, the first crewed lunar flyby, is now targeted for no earlier than February to April 2026. We've seen multiple schedule slips that was originally targeting 2024.
Due to the heat shield and other things.
Heat shield investigation, some life support system issues as well. But as of early 2025, the hardware is coming together, integrating, and NASA seems to have renewed confidence. They're even looking at ways to maybe pull that launch earlier into 2026.
Okay, fingers crossed for that one. Then the big one, Artemis III.
Right, Artemis III, planned for no earlier than mid-2027. This is slated to be the first crewed lunar landing since Apollo 17.
The return.
The return. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, nail-biting. This mission's timeline is exceptionally fragile. Why? Because it is entirely dependent on SpaceX achieving some truly unprecedented things.
With Starship.
With Starship. This really shows NASA's huge bet on private innovation. It's a complete departure from how Apollo was done, everything government controlled.
So what does SpaceX need to do?
Before astronauts can fly on Starship HLS, SpaceX has to successfully land an uncrewed version on the moon first, a full demonstration.
Okay, that makes sense.
But even before that, they need to master in-orbit cryogenic propellant transfer.
Refueling in space.
Exactly. Imagine trying to refuel a Formula One car mid-race, but you're in zero-G with super-cooled, highly volatile fuel like liquid oxygen and methane.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. It will require a whole fleet of Starship tanker flights just to fuel up a single lander in Earth orbit before it heads to the moon. This reliance on a commercial partner, using a technologically novel system that's still under development, it's arguably the single greatest risk to the Artemis timeline. It's a real-time stress test of this whole new space economy model.
Wow. Okay. And beyond Artemis III.
For Artemis IV and beyond, planned from roughly 2028 out to 2035, the idea is to continue building out the gateway, deliver the Lunar Terrain Vehicle, the LTV rover, and a surface habitat, and critically introduce Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander on Artemis V.
Ah, the second lander.
Right. That deliberate dual provider strategy for the HLS. It's designed to foster competition, hopefully drive down cost, and crucially provide redundancy, mitigate that single point of failure risk we just talked about with relying solely on Starship initially.
Okay, so that's the U.S. approach. Complex, commercially dependent, high risk, high reward. But China's lunar ambitions and the ILRS offer, as you said, a stark contrast.
They really do.
A state-directed, systematic, and let's face it, incredibly successful program so far. How has their methodical approach yielded such significant results?
You're absolutely right to call it methodical. China's Lunar Exploration Program, or CLEP, is defined by its multi-phase strategy. Each phase deliberately builds on the capabilities mastered in the previous one. It's very incremental.
Walk us through it.
Sure. They completed Phase I orbital missions. Done. Phase 2 soft landers and rovers, done. That included Chang'e 4's historic first soft landing on the far side of the moon.
A huge first.
Absolutely. Then Phase 3 sample return missions, also completed. Chang'e 5 brought back near-side samples in 2020. And then, even more ambitious, Chang'e 6 in June 2024 returned the first-ever samples from the far side. A massive scientific and, frankly, public relations achievement.
Incredible. So what phase are they in now?
They're now deep into Phase SALT. This phase is all about in situ research and laying the groundwork for base construction. It's the direct precursor to the ILRS.
What missions does that involve?
Key missions are Change 7, planned for around 2026. That's designed as a comprehensive South Pole survey mission, specifically looking for water ice. And then Change 8, maybe 2028, 2029. This one is a critical technology verification mission.
Testing what specifically?
Its main goal is to test in situ resource utilization, ISRU, including trying to 3D print lunar bricks using regolith right there on the moon, proving they can build with local materials.
And China is also developing its own manned lunar program in parallel, right? Aiming to land taikonauts before 2030.
Correct. They're developing the hardware now, the Long March 10 heavy lift rocket, the Lanyu lander. They've stated a goal of landing Chinese astronauts before 2030.
And the ILRS coalition itself, how's that shaping up?
The plan is ambitious. A basic version of the ILRS base completed by 2035, potentially expanded by 2045, and it's clearly a key instrument of Chinese foreign policy. They're actively building this global alternative to Artemis, recruiting international partners. Their stated goal is around 50 countries eventually.
So it's space diplomacy.
Absolutely. It's geopolitical soft power in action. They're offering participation to nations often outside the traditional Western space consensus, presenting the ILRS as open to all interested countries based on principles of shared benefits and collaboration.
Okay. Beyond these two main blocks, we touched on other key players. How are their national programs impacting this whole lunar landscape?
Their impact is definitely considerable, even if they aren't leading the massive programs. Take Russia's Roscosmos. They had that significant setback with the Luna 25 failure in August 2023.
Their first attempts in decades, right?
First in 47 years. And while they have ambitious plans on paper, Luna 26, 27, 28, the program is facing severe challenges. Technical and quality control issues, the impact of international sanctions, budget shortfalls, reports of a brain drain.
So their role in ILRS might be smaller than initially planned.
It really puts into question Russia's ability to contribute meaningfully to the ILRS at the scale originally envisioned. There's a risk China could become the de facto sole leader of that initiative.
Okay. What about India again?
India's ISRO, as we said, is definitely top tier after Chandrayaan-3. Their frugal innovation approach is widely admired. Future plans include Chandrayaan-4 for sample return and that joint LUPEX mission with Japan, where JXA provides the rover and ISR provides the lander, a great example of leveraging partnerships.
And Japan.
Japan's JXA really cemented its role as the precision technologist with the slim pinpoint landing. That ability to land with high accuracy is going to be absolutely critical for targeted science and especially for future resource extraction. It makes JXA an indispensable partner for anyone serious about utilizing the moon.
And Europe. Remind us of their strategy.
Europe's ESA is playing that sophisticated dual strategy. Deep collaboration within Artemis, providing the Orion service module, gateway modules, which keeps them central to human exploration, but also developing their own independent capabilities, like the Argonaut large robotic cargo lander, targeting a first flight in 2031. It's about ensuring strategic autonomy, ensuring Europe always has its own path to the lunar surface if needed.
Right, so all these individual missions, these partnerships, the competition, it seems like they're all feeding into this bigger idea of a lunar test bed.
Exactly.
Which isn't just one piece of hardware, right? It sounds more like a complex ecosystem of capabilities, all needed to make the moon a truly sustainable stepping stone to Mars. How do we even begin to build something like that?
That's a great question because it really is a multi-tiered approach. It's not like flipping a switch. You start with Earth-based analogs. Things like NASA's regolith testbed at the Ames Research Center, labs where they simulate the lunar environment, the dust, the vacuum, the temperatures to test hardware and software before it ever leaves Earth.
Okay, testing on Earth first.
And then you move to in situ demonstrations. These are precursor robotic missions, often smaller, designed to test one or maybe a few critical technologies directly on the moon, like testing a specific drill designed for ice or a small 3D printer, proving individual concepts work in the real environment.
Got it.
And finally, the ultimate objective is the integrated proving ground. That's the permanent facility we're talking about, like the proposed Artemis Base Camp or the core ILRS station. A place where multiple technologies tested individually can now work together reliably in a sustained operational system. Power, extraction, construction, mobility, all interconnected.
And at the heart of this whole testbed concept seems to be this cornerstone technology, in situ resource utilization, ISRU.
Absolutely critical.
It's really about living off the land, isn't it? Using what's already there.
Exactly. The ability to extract and use resources found on the moonwater ice, minerals in the regolith, it's not just nice to have, it's essential. Why? Because launching everything you need from Earth is incredibly expensive, prohibitively so for long-term stays.
So ISRU is about making lunar settlement sustainable.
It's literally about making the moon potentially pay for itself in a way. Turning lunar dirt into building blocks, turning lunar ice into breathable air, drinking water, and crucially, rocket fuel. The highest priority right now is water ice extraction.
Right, the South Pole focus.
Precisely. NASA's Prime 1 experiment, which flew on Intuitive Machines' IM-2 mission, was designed specifically to drill for water ice near the South Pole.
But the lander tipped over.
It did tip, yes, which unfortunately prevented the drill from actually penetrating the regolith. However, the instrument suite was successfully activated on the lunar surface. It collected invaluable engineering data on how the system performed in the lunar environment, the thermal conditions, the power draw. So even that setback provided crucial learning.
Okay, so learning even from failures. What else in ISRU?
The other major thrust is regolith processing and construction, basically using the lunar soil itself. We saw Firefly Aerospace on their successful Blue Ghost Mission 1 demonstrate the lunar planet vac.
How does that work?
It uses a puff of gas to pneumatically, sort of like a vacuum cleaner in reverse, collect a sample of a regolith, a simple, clever way to gather material. And back on Earth, NASA has projects like MMPAC researching robotic 3D printing techniques like contour crafting for building structures. And as we mentioned, China plans to test 3D printing lunar bricks directly from regolith on their Change 8 mission.
So building habitats or landing pads from moon dust.
That's the long-term goal.
And for any of this to work, for a truly functional test bed, you obviously need foundational infrastructure, power, comms, navigation.
Absolutely essential. You can't do much without them. Power is a huge challenge, especially for surviving that 14 Earth Day lunar night and for energy-intensive ISRU processes.
Most landers now just operate for the lunar day, right?
Correct. They rely on solar panels and batteries, shutting down during the night. Future solutions need to be more robust. We're talking more efficient solar arrays, advanced long-duration batteries, and critically, fission surface power systems. NASA is actively researching small nuclear reactors for long-duration continuous power regardless of sunlight.
Nuclear power on the moon. Okay. What about communications?
Communications need to be continuous and high bandwidth, especially with multiple assets, potentially robots and humans operating simultaneously. China has already deployed its Queqiao-2 relay satellite to support its Farside and South Pole missions.
And the U.S.
Artemis will rely on the Deep Space Network, the Lunar Gateway acting as a comms hub, and also commercial relay satellites. Firefly, for instance, plans to deploy a relay on its Blue Ghost mission too.
And getting around.
Yeah.
Landing precisely.
Navigation. Precision landing and surface mobility are essential. You need to land near resources or near previously established infrastructure. And JK's SLIM mission provided that breakthrough demonstration of vision-based terrain relative navigation, pinpointing its landing site. That proves you can actually go exactly where you intend to go, which is a game changer.
Okay, so putting all this together, what's the verdict for 2025? Is anything resembling a comprehensive integrated lunar test bed actually ready?
The short answer, no, definitely not. A comprehensive integrated lunar test bed is not ready in 2025.
So the user query about that was a bit early.
Yes, the period from 2025 to 2030 is really this pivotal period for testing individual components. Think of all the CLPS missions scheduled, plus China's Change 7. They are packed with first-of-their-kind technology demonstrations. Prime 1, lunar planet vac, dust mitigation tech, precision landing systems.
So testing the pieces, not the whole system yet.
Exactly. The idea of a truly ready integrated test bed is premature by at least 5, probably more like 10 years. The 2030s are the target time frame for actually constructing those initial bases, the Artemis Base Camp or the ILRS. The test bed isn't something you deploy, it's the cumulative outcome of this entire decade's worth of high-risk, high-reward exploration and technology demonstration.
Okay, that clarifies the timeline. So bringing it all together, this second lunar age is clearly dynamic, it's complex, driven by this potent mix of geopolitical ambition, cutting-edge science, and these rapidly emerging commercial interests. It feels like a really high-stakes game unfolding.
It really is. And when you look at the consolidated timelines, those high-stakes dependencies become crystal clear.
How so?
For the US-led efforts under Artemis, the pace is just inextricably tied to the success of commercial heavy lift and landing systems. We keep coming back to it, but SpaceX's Starship HLS is the single greatest variable. Its success, its schedule, dictates the timing of the human return.
Yeah, for China.
For the China-led ILRS, the critical path runs straight through the successful execution of Chang'e 7 and Chang'e 8. They must prove their ability to find lunar resources, especially water ice, and then demonstrate they can actually use them in situ with missions like Chang'e 8. That's foundational for their base plans.
So, given those dependencies, what are the absolute inflection points to watch between now and, say, 2030? The key events that will really signal shifts in this strategic landscape?
Okay, yeah, good question. I'd point to several key things you should keep an eye on.
Lay them out for us.
First, the Artemis II launch, now targeted no earlier than 2026. As the first crewed flight of SLS and Orion in over 50 years, it carries immense political and programmatic weight for the U.S. and its partners. A smooth mission builds huge momentum.
Okay, Artemis II. What else?
Then, the Starship uncrewed lunar landing demo, whenever that happens. As we discussed, this is the absolute gonna-go milestone for the Artemis III human landing. All eyes are on SpaceX for this.
Makes sense. China side.
Definitely watch China's Changes 7 mission around 2026. This will be their first comprehensive robotic assault on prospecting South Pole resources. Its findings could be hugely significant.
Right.
And then, of course, the first crewed Artemis landing itself, Artemis III, currently pegged around mid-2027. That remains the ultimate geopolitical prize in this phase.
And for the ILRS construction.
Watch for the first ILRS construction missions, particularly Chang'e around 2028 or 2029. Seeing them test ISRU and 3D printing on the surface will mark the first real physical steps toward building that rival lunar base.
Lots to track there.
Definitely. So in concluding this second lunar age, it's not some far-off future vision anymore. It's happening now. It's a present-day reality. And it's defined by this intense competition for technological supremacy, for strategic positioning, and really for establishing the norms for a completely new economic frontier.
And the focus on the South Pole seems key.
It really underscores the shift. We've moved beyond pure exploration, flags, and footprints to a model driven by resource potential and long-term sustainability. What we're witnessing in real time is a test of two fundamentally contrasting models for space development.
The US-led versus the China-led.
Right. The US-led Artemis model, distributed, heavily reliant on commercial partners, accepting high risk for potentially high reward and rapid innovation, versus the China-led ILRS model, more centralized, state-directed, methodical, incremental. The coming 5 years leading up to 2030 will be absolutely decisive in revealing which of these models proves more effective, more resilient, and ultimately more sustainable in the long run.
And it's important to remember, I guess, that while that permanent, self-sufficient test bed on the moon is still a goal for the 2030s, today's missions, the ones launching now and in the next few years, they're laying absolutely essential and irreversible groundwork. The future of human space exploration is truly being forged right now, with every launch, every landing attempt, every success, and yes, every setback. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. As we move beyond just proving these individual technologies and start seriously planning to build a true integrated lunar settlement, what unexpected challenges might pop up beyond the purely technical ones we've discussed?
Yeah, good point.
Maybe in the role of governance, resource sharing agreements, or even the deeper long-term societal implications of potentially having two competing lunar rule books, two different human expansion philosophies operating side by side in space. Something to definitely mull over as you keep watching the moon.